afternoon, everyone. So welcome to our first panel. So speaking of the massive adoption in China, so one typical use case is when you go back home in the Spring Festival. So what people are talking about in the Spring Festival. So my first question is about, imagine you're going back to your hometown to explain to your 70 years old mother or grandmother, depending on age. So what would you say about massive adoption, about your name, your product, your service to your grandmother? Starting from Donglin.
Okay. I'm from Alibaba Cloud, so probably I give example of what the cloud computing is to my grandmother, if she's still with us. I think it's very, you have to start from her basic life. Normally, she will go to the market in the morning and grab some grocery shopping. And at that stage, actually, it happens with some cloud computing, although she might not notice that. For example, previously, she's very used to the payment of cash and bargaining with the traders. But later, actually, I opened up the WeChat Pay, Alipay, and I transferred some money to that. And she noticed that it's very convenient. And from there, I just gave her a very quick question. Do you know what supports this kind of application? Obviously, it's not a centralized server or something. It's the cloud. So that's the cloud computing makes your payment and other aspects of lives much easier. So in that way, she noticed that actually might not be that visible to ordinary people of cloud computing, Web3, AI, all these fancy words. But in the end, actually, these basic infrastructure actually are supporting our daily lives. Exactly like air or electricity. It's a utility. You might not notice that, but without it, actually, it's a problem. So probably I'll explain like this.
Rich?
Hey everybody, Rich from Cordell. So both my parents are actually over 70, so I have a lot of experience trying to explain what I do. And we've had many roles and that sort of thing over the time, and I think this is the first one that they get. So for most things in crypto, it's usually good to start with Bitcoin. Core has a very special tie into Bitcoin, and the majority of the world now understands that Bitcoin is similar to like a digital gold. So when I explain Core to my parents, I say that Core helps you earn more Bitcoin, and it helps you move Bitcoin around the world faster. And we keep it really simple. And what I'm actually trying to abstract over with that terminology is Core is trying to unlock the $1.5 trillion of trapped Bitcoin liquidity with things like Bitcoin staking, Bitcoin DeFi, and trying to really unlock this perfect, scarce asset. So that's usually how I do it.
Okay, thank the awesome Zen team to have us here to set all this up. Okay, I'm from .swap. So .swap is a L1 Bitcoin swap, right? It is very challenging to explain that to the old nanny, right? But I will try. I will say that it is a place that we can trade digital gold with digital gold jewelries, right? And without worrying about some middleman to put their hands on your jewelry or gold to change that. Okay, it would be very hard to explain that concept with old people, right?
Kyle?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Carl from Reforge. Reforge is a US-based venture capital firm. We specialize in investing in the earliest stage. I actually don't even have to imagine, because back in 2018, I was actually an entrepreneur and built a layer 1. It was a high-performance blockchain used for payments. And I actually went back to China and saw my grandma, and she did ask me, why did I leave my previous company to make fake coins? And I told her I was building a version of Alipay that cannot be regulated. and she immediately thought that I was going to prison. So that was the story there.
Okay, that's very funny stories. I think it's a very great warm-up for the question. So the second question is, let's say make the story continuous. So it's still Spring Festival, like after all the dinners and drinks, you suddenly feel very upset, standing alone all the way in the wild, and there'll be heavy snow. It's like everyone knows you are so upset. You are so worried. There's a lot of things going not well in the massive adoption of Web3 AI. And now there's someone come to you, pat on your back, and ask, could you please share something that you are concerned about or worried about the Web3 massive adoption? It's free, like anyone can pick the microphone.
So I'm happy to take this. So Web3 today has massive adoption challenges because the technology is forward. So to interact with these protocols, these dApps, et cetera, you have to be willing to take like a technological risk, and the user experience is usually quite poor. And the analogy that I give for most of these examples is like, imagine if you want to choose between social networks. You don't choose between the underlying database behind those social networks, which is really the maturity we're at right now. And we need to get to a spot where it's totally seamless and abstracted away. And until we get there, we're going to have these real challenges. And hopefully things like chain abstraction, et cetera, will get us closer. We've already seen a big improvement in the last couple of years, things like account abstraction, which allows you to log in with your, like your Google or your Facebook versus having to do a seed phrase. And I think we'll continue to see a lot of progress. And soon, a lot of these crypto components will be hidden away.
Yeah, so I think the biggest problem that we have today is we don't have the best reputation as an industry, right? So for example, if you're in AI, everyone knows and is very certain that that's the future, right? So everyone wants a piece of this, they want exposure. The problem with blockchain is the way it started, right? Back in 2011, 2012, Bitcoin was synonymous to scams, right? So it never had the best reputation out there. It's getting better and better. So I think as we go through this process of legitimizing the industry, for example, Bitcoin ETF has done a lot for the entire industry, right? Because now you're seeing family offices, people with retirement accounts buying into the field. So I think the biggest hurdle today to get massive adoption really is actually our reputation, and that is improving over time. So.
Yeah, probably. I can. I think for the mass adoption, probably we need one or two killer app. Like in previous presentation, I saw Victor actually show the slide. In the electric world, actually the killer app is just the light bulb. And in the internet industry, it's just email. And what's for the Web3? So that's a big question mark. And I'm from the a cloud computing background, and if you see how the cloud computing is growing, actually it started from the internet, where they naturally grow on the cloud, and it provides a massive value to the society. It like the e-commerce, like the cashless payment, like the game and social network. All these things actually bring direct value to the end users. And it's a killer app like Alipay or Taobao or WeChat. And with these massive adopted killer apps, back-end technologies naturally will be adopted by the general public. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think Mr. Gore said it very right. That when I don't know when did you first get in touch or trade the Bitcoin first? I think back to 2011, 2012. At that time, when we can actually trade Bitcoin using Chinese yuan, right? And we move the Bitcoins around, and we need to wait at least 1 hour to get the transaction confirmed on one exchange. And if we withdraw the Bitcoin from one exchange to another, right? one exchange will say that your transaction is sent out, but it does not receive on another part. That is that will freak me out, right? And so this way, I'm thinking that why this kind of technology will be widely adopted by everyone. It is stupid, right? I think what we are trying to find is a way that we can use the great blockchain technology just in those applications, but it will not be used, or the assets itself or the Bitcoin itself might not need to be held or be used by the end consumers. Why we need to build such services on top of all those token holders, but not the massive, the mass, right? So if we need to, right now, if we always need to ask our consumer to buy some tokens, to buy some assets, then they can actually use the technology. I think it is the main barrier that lies ahead.
Yeah, so speaking of the mainstream recognition of Web3, so I think recently Hong Kong and Singapore, they have a lot of new policies to encourage the development of Web3 industry. But another thing to notice that, so people are talking about Web3, but someone noticed they are talking a different language of Web3 because it's not that's crypto native. They're talking about regulations. They're talking about tokenization of the traditional financial institutions like banks, JP Morgan, HSBC, all these kind of traditional banks or financial institutions. You're speaking of the Bitcoin ETF. Someone sees that as a positive side of being recognized by mainstream. Someone others think that it's too centralized. It's not crypto native. So that kind of massive adoption from mainstream, but speaking a different language. So how do you see that kind of a trend, or how do you like that? It's an open question. Yeah.
I think maybe in different views, right? Those bankers, they would like the Bitcoin or other assets to be included in their portfolios, right? They just treat it as an ordinary assets, and just like gold, silver, or other precious metals, right? It is a kind of narrative of the old financial world. But we still have some smart part that we can build contracts, right? We can use other technique that can better use Bitcoin or other blockchain technique as a ledger. It is a very good, transparent ledger system that can help us to bookkeeping everything onto that. But currently, we only start with those virtual assets or something like that. But I think in the future, we may move from those virtual assets or meme to other like real world assets that can represent everything. I think everything is bookkeeping. When you hold some assets, you need to bookkeeping that to prove the ownership of those one, right? So I think maybe in the near future, it will not come true, but in the long term, the power of a transparent ledger system will benefit all the humanity and all. Thank you.
So thank you for that. So looking back in history, if I still remember back in 2012, 2013, 2014, right, most of the blockchain projects being crypto native meant that you don't get VC funding, right? So like you don't pre-mine the tokens. There's no like FDV. You mine this thing yourself, right? So that's what it meant to be crypto native. And projects started raising money, right? Because that was obviously the more efficient way of executing a project, because you obviously need more engineering power to start off, right? You're no longer amateurs, one person writing the entire source code. So people really didn't like that, right? And there was no such term as crypto native, but it was obviously like the argument between the really crypto native people and the people who are trying to fundraise. And time moved on. So now this is the de facto operating model where if you start a project, you don't go around saying, hey, the code is done and you guys come mine the coin that I have. You kind of go to the VCs and you get money from them, right? And we're all crypto native now. So I really think like being crypto native is dynamic and it changes throughout time, right? And who are we to judge someone that is trying to use this technology and calling them names such as, hey, you're like not crypto native, because blockchain is just means to an end, right? So if you're treating this as the end, then we're in big trouble. So if we bring on more and more users, it doesn't matter like if these guys are trying to tokenize treasury bills, as long as you know like decentralization is great, but it's a spectrum, right? Like you have the most decentralized stuff like Bitcoin, and then you have like extremely centralized stuff, which I will not name, right? Because I don't want to offend people here. But you know, we should always keep an open mind because things always change, right?
So I think just to add to that, I think the ETF has been massive for both legitimacy and accessibility. So Bitcoin is here to stay, which is incredible. It's been a fight that many in this room have been fighting for 15 years. But then from the accessibility standpoint, there's now trillions of dollars of wealth that can participate for the first time. And this has been something that regulation has prevented in places like the United States for now over a decade. And these people, to the point that was just made, are now becoming more and more crypto aware. And I think the idea is now maybe they don't directly hold spot Bitcoin, but they're now participating in the crypto economy. And that's a trend that we want to see, where they essentially walk that complexity ladder from, oh, now I'm holding a Bitcoin ETF, to maybe now I'm participating in some ecosystems. And then eventually they'll become kind of more and more on-chain. And I think that's a very good trend to watch.
For me, I think probably there are two parts here. One is the technical part. As technology, actually, it's dramatically different from the traditional centralized computing platforms. So that's why lots of developers, even the developers themselves, are very, sometimes got unfamiliar with this new technology. And there's the business part. And because this is a fundamentally disruptive technology, so it's going to change lots of things. And that's why I think it's very natural for the government, for the people to be very cautious about this. And this cautiousness, I would assume, could be last maybe a little bit longer, because this is a huge change, or the business model is quite different from the traditional one. So how we can prove this value? Back to my previous point, the killer app. When the iPhone came out, you remember maybe 10 or more than 10 years ago, there are not that many useful apps there. People swipe the screen just to toss some papers, or just light up a flashlight, something that's not useful. But 2 or 3 years ago, and there's some killer app in it, and it became massive adoption. So again, I think the regulations or the compliance is very important to make this as a healthy development and in the long term.
Yeah, so I think there's a famous saying. It's like when you are in a relationship, it's like you two cannot see the enemy of the others. So it's like you cannot say, I won't listen to you. I have my own standard. I have my own rules. We are not in the same person. So it's always like not good. So I think one thing that interesting is that the mainstream try to recognize the crypto world or Web3 world. Also, the Web3 world need to be open to the regulations and to all the mainstream attitudes. As Carl mentioned, it's like crypto native. The definition of crypto native will keep changing over time, as long as it will create a better future for us, right? And the third question, the story continues, right? As you're standing in the wild, like it's very dark, it's very cold with all the heavy snow. However, one thing that's most interesting in the Spring Festival is we have fireworks, right? You can see there, there's a lot of beautiful fireworks. It's very beautiful, although it's very short. It's like a lot of innovations in the Web3 world. So could you guys kind of share about the most beautiful fireworks that you have experienced in the last 1 or 2 years? Innovations, yes. Any exciting things about massive adoptions in the Web3 world?
So I'm happy to take a stab at that one. So the first time, and this is like self-promotion in a way, so admittedly. So the first time we actually used Element Wallet for the first time, which is the flagship wallet of the core ecosystem, it felt like magic. And the reason it felt like magic was because it's essentially Web 2.5. And what that means is it's got some centralized components, but it's still using Web3 as the back end for all of the decentralized censorship resistant properties that you'd imagine. But you still have kind of the feeling of Telegram on one side and then like a Venmo or some P2P payments app on the other side. And you can barely actually feel like you're using crypto. And I think that's how so many of these apps will continue to develop over time. And the analogy that the team uses is actually being in simple mode versus advanced mode. And if you think about so many wallets out there, it's a bunch of like really developer-facing UI, warnings that are really scary that you can't understand, these bare assets that if you lose it, it's gone. And that sort of thing is going to be such a hindrance. But it really was kind of this amazing like light bulb moment the first time we used it.
Anyone else can have something to share?
I mean, last 1 to 2 years were a not so great time for crypto, right? If you think back to 2022 till now. So, I really want to expand the time horizon a bit longer. I think several development has happened, right? I know we all use MetaMask, but I generally think that's one of the worst wallet ever invented in human history. So I think, and I'm a big fan of cross-chain interoperability, just connecting things together, right? So one of the wallet that came out is called Rabby Wallet. Really improved the user experience, right? But it took me about a year before I actually adopted it because I just didn't want to make. I want to make sure there was no like malware in the software because changing wallet is a very personal thing. So I think that's a big advancement. And two, I think in general, the interoperability field has improved drastically. I still remember using some of the bridges, and I was just so scared, right? Like, this is even worse than sending coins from one exchange to the other. It's like you're sending cross-chain. Sometimes these bridges break. But these days, we have pretty good interoperability. But it's still very, very nascent. Layer 0, Axelar, Wormhole, you generally don't have a problem. You don't have to worry about, hey, is this bridge going to rug me because they're not going to give me the coins. So I think those two areas have improved drastically, but I do anticipate more and more improvements need to come, right? Because the infrastructure today is still very, very immature, and the user experience is not great. So
I would say that in the last year, I would like the creation of Ordinals protocol that brings a lot of attention to the Bitcoin protocol because we can actually put something other than the virtual currency there onto the blockchain and use the blockchain as a ledger, right, to keep all the data here. Although the data may be expensive, but currently we can say if we have a bookkeeping of real estate, right, the real estate, the property deeds, they are papers, but still they are very high in value, right? So we can also think if we can use the public ledger nature of the Bitcoin to keep record of anything that is valuable in our civilization, that would be very good. So it opens the minds of someone, right, or many people that they might start to thinking about the utilities of the ledger. I think it will be very good sign for us to think more about how we can use a public ledger, how we can achieve, how we can create those assets like RWAs or other things out from the Bitcoin ledger, maybe, and to be widely adopted by the traditional, the financial world. They will accept that, right?
So I think for me, it's one thing attracts me most in the last 1 or 2 years is about real-world assets. So basically, I think as Vector Joe mentioned in the first presentation, it's something that you have to, Web3 world have to connect to what we are living in the real world, and something that potentially with the real-world assets there, tokens there, and also with the adoption from the mainstream financial institutions, and also with Web3 startups, I think it will create a new ecosystem, right? And the last question is about dreaming. Like it's too late. So after the fireworks, like you go to the bed, have a dream. Tomorrow is another day. It's not a new year, new era. And somehow in the dream, you are free to think about anything that could be possible happened, whether you build it or you wish to someone will build it for you, or as a user, you would like make a wish that someone will build it for you. Can you please like share 1 or 2 things that you were dreaming about, what will happen in the 1 or 2 years about driving the massive adoption of Web3?
I can go first. I think it's less about like what needs to be built, but it's the state of where everything is, right? The state of industry. Specifically, I think it's absolute insanity today. We fight over like, hey, Solana is better than Ethereum. To me, it's like, hey, Verizon is better than AT&T. Oh, by the way, like I use Verizon, so don't call me if you're on AT&T, right? So like these things are just rails at the end of the day. And this is why there's also so much opportunity in Web3 is people are still fighting over stuff that won't matter in like 5 years, right? Can you imagine like today be like, hey, I only be friends with people that is on the same network and we are a big family, but everyone else is enemy, right? So I really hope that we can move forward because it's a means to an end, right? So you can tokenize RWAs on Solana, Ethereum, I don't care, right? The only thing I care about is how do we onboard institutional capital to buy our bags, right? So I really hope that we will get over that hurdle. And in order to do that, I think one of the most important things we have to build is actually world-class interoperability, right? Today, they're kind of like, they're great, they're reliable, but they're very slow. So I look forward to having like an extremely connected blockchain world similar to the internet today.
So I'm happy to follow that up because mine has kind of a similar twist. So one of the things we're working on at Core, where Core is an L1, is working on local fee markets. And why local fee markets are interesting is because many people in this room have probably experienced days when you want to use Ethereum or something else and a transaction costs like $300-400. And that prices out the vast majority of the world. And what we're working on is kind of similar to what some of the stuff that Solana's done, where you get fast, cheap, predictable transactions as long as you're not the one using the majority of the resources on the network. And we think that's a big piece for hitting scale because you need to be able to just onboard into these ecosystems and perform a transaction without having this really nasty downside that can be very unexpected and just prevent a lot of people from even participating in this economy at all. And then kind of in a second vein to that, the other piece that folks like Satoshi App are building on Core are mechanisms for cashless onboarding. So in a similar way, there's 6 billion Web2 users out there. There's maybe 100 million Web3 users. And for so many people, the blocker is actually getting on-chain for the first time. And then obviously the on-chain experience is all the challenges that we've already talked about. But we need to find these creative ways where people can do proof of work or something, answer questions, whatever that is, to get their first amount of crypto. And then once they get their crypto, they can go on kind of that knowledge journey, stake, et cetera, continue to earn and become more of like a Web3 participant. And that's how a lot of that knowledge gap will get filled. And hopefully we'll get hundreds of millions more, if not billions of folks on chain.
Okay, I would say if we foresee the future, I would love to see that in the end we can have some consensus about blockchain, and we may have a global single source of truth that use the Bitcoin blockchain as a single source of truth, right? And can be recognized by every participant all over the world. That through this way, the people are more easily to get to some point of agreement together, and that will resolve a lot of dispute, right? So this way, I would see that maybe in the 5 or 10 years later, and people, we are trying to create a better society, but we need the transparency, right? We need some dignity, and we need people to be more honest. The honest is a very good word, even in the Bitcoin white paper, right? We need to act honestly. And so this way, we can have a very good bookkeeping system, have a larger system that is distributed and can be trusted and verified by all the participants all over the world. It might be possible using the public chain like Bitcoin, and we need some efficient way to extend it to have the bookkeeping value so much more than what we can have currently. I think that would be a very good, a very promising future for us that worth fighting for. Thank you.
For me, actually, I think I would dream of having a more secure and more robust and more user-friendly infrastructure for Web3, not only the developers but also the general public. Because I heard lots of feedback from our customers and partners, and also in the previous presentation we see Zhang is doing lots of work in that area to solve the problem, the distributed, too long the latency, or not much computing power, or the security. All of them actually are the infrastructure problem, and I think at this stage there are still many fundamental things are not that ready. So I would assume that in the next few years we should focus on this. And apart from that, actually, if you see the Web 2 world after the essential servers, networks, that will be the middle layer part, which is to make the building or the coding part is more easier for the developers. Then in the Web3 world, probably we have better developer tools, platforms, and services, APIs. All those are ready for more developers to turn to Web3 and generate more applications and use scenarios for the general public. So I think infrastructure is a better infrastructure is definitely a goal from my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. So I will also share a little bit by myself. So basically, something that I was imagining is a combination of Web3 and AI. So basically, as a person, you have everything you have done online and offline, and all this data from the Web3 perspective are owned by yourself, right? And if you imagine you have a vault, like all the data, all the information you have done online and offline, and then you have an AI model, an agent, to handle all this information for you, and to monetize this in terms of your daily work, daily life, and potentially some API service that can be leveraged by the others. I think something potentially could be some dreaming that I was thinking of. Yeah, okay. Thanks for all the sharing. So hopefully with this panel, so I think everyone is like you got a good idea about when going back to your hometown, how to talk with your grandmother, and you enjoy all the fireworks in this Web3 festival. And hopefully you'll have a good dream tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.